All right, Tina.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Bennett, the current PMEA State President, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight to help introduce the webinar series PMEA Cares. We're hoping that these become a valuable addition to your weekly routine. A few short weeks ago, we were all cruising along in the third 9 weeks of the school year, and fests and festivals were in full swing. And suddenly we found ourselves walking out of the classroom with no idea when we would return. This was something none of us had ever dealt with before. And as schools across the country faced the new challenge of teaching completely online, music educators jumped into action and began posting and sharing resources with each other. PMEA was faced with many challenges, as were other states. Some of our festivals were completed and others were ready to run. The executive board met almost daily to discuss the changes and potential ramifications. Mary Lynn Peters, our all-state coordinator, was instrumental in keeping conductors and the executive board, as well as district presidents, informed of the cancellations as they became imminent. Financially, PMEA has some terrific individuals who have had the forethought and careful design of our finances to create a solid plan to keep us fiscally sound for a future situation such as this. And many thanks to Abby Young, our executive director, and her amazing team, Marissa Labant, Kayla Steely, and Kelly Gressley, along with the assistance from Margaret Bauer. They've worked tirelessly from home as much as possible to keep things running as smoothly as possible. And at this time, PMEA is in solid shape, and we will make it through these difficult times. As far as festival goes, let me remind you, PMEA had to cancel not only Region Orchestra halfway and band, the complete all-state ensemble event, as well as the entire spring conference. This conference had only been canceled one other time, 75 years ago, over 75 years ago, during World War II. I cannot thank immediate past President Henry Perlberg and President-elect Phil Stadel enough for their help and guidance and assistance and support through this entire process. Now let's look and see what's next. The board met yesterday and mapped out online audition procedures for the remainder of the orchestra auditions, a plan of action for region band auditions, and information for the choir students, as well as the jazz, vocal jazz students, and all of the at-large instruments. You'll receive detailed instructions as to how to go about these procedures. Your district presidents are a great point of reference for questions, but please make sure you read everything twice and be sure that please remember, each member, it's your responsibility to communicate with his or her students to see that these students get the information they need. All of this information is available again on the website. Audition excerpts, dates, results, and the like are all mapped out and discussed. Please know that every detail was examined, and once the process is completed and the results are posted, the students earning medals will receive them once their music is returned. This will not occur until after the quarantine directive is lifted. Then and only then will the students return their music and receive their medals. We do not want them in any post offices trying to get that done. What about the conference? We have reached out to presenters and offered them options to do webinars, in which some of them are going to do, or they can return to the conference next year in Erie in 2021. So now what? We're planning on holding a summer conference, hopefully, if at all possible. It's slated for July 20th through 22nd at the Red Lion Hotel in Harrisburg. We're not taking registrations at this time due to the instability of the times, and we're planning on shifting some of the awards and recognitions to that conference if at all possible. A decision will come later date as to whether or not we will cancel or move forward with that event. You know, when the realization we were going to be out of school and that musicals were canceled and concerts quieted and the classroom lights were turned off, many of the people who were leaders of PMEA immediately began talking about what to do to help you, our members, through these uncharted waters. Paul Fox, our TTRR chair, began combing the internet and collecting scores of links and sites, and they're available to you all on our website. I still wake up every morning with a knot in the pit of my stomach because being away from my students is very difficult for me. I am comforted by the videos of so many people playing and singing and dancing to music. Celebrities are performing from their living rooms and networks are offering free concerts. It completely enforces what we all know. Music is vital and necessary part of our lives, and it's what we cling to when times get difficult. Music is not a luxury nor a frivolous waste of school hours. It is a necessity as necessary as the breaths we take every day. I pray that you and your family maintain good health and that these webinars help to fill your mind and soul with some tools to help you get through these crazy times. Teri Myers, our mentor chair, along with Stacy Paparone, District 5 President, and Scott Sheehan, NAFME President-elect, began talking about what to do. And they've created this webinar series titled PMEA Cares, Together We Teach. I thank you for joining us here tonight, and I now will turn it over to Teri Myers.
Thanks, Tina. That was great. I got goosebumps. It feels good to talk about music with passion like that with fellow music teachers. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So as Tina just mentioned, this idea just kind of came out of a conversation that Scott and Stacy and I were actually going to plan a completely different webinar together, and then this need arose, and so that's how this all came about. Many of you filled out a survey about frustrations you have. Sorry about that. Frustrations you have with the, honestly, there you go. Frustrations you have with online teaching so far, and also a lot of the successes that many of you have experienced. So we're going to share some of those. I'm going to start with just a success that I had. One of the things that a couple of you mentioned in your survey was I'm so sorry. I don't know, can you even hear that on the thing? Was the, how do I teach the way I want to teach online? A lot of you refer to yourselves as old school teachers, or how do I teach primary grades without using websites, without, you know, when they would need somebody to help them with the computer? How do I still deliver the instruction the way that I'm used to delivering it? And that was my very first success. So I'm going to share it with you right now. I'm really lucky that I already had a mode of communicating with my students. We already had a school district Facebook page. So we had an elementary department music Facebook page that we use already to share our student successes. We wanted to show people what kids did in music class. So we went ahead and created a Facebook page to do that. And there we go. So I already had this mode to be able to show everybody a live lesson. Can everybody see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. How about now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is what I did was I said, I can't wait. I can't wait to get back to my students. I'm going to teach a kindergarten lesson on Facebook, and I'm going to do it live. So of course, I got permission from my school district to do this. This was before we jumped into online learning. And I'm just going to share a little bit of it with you now, because I want to let you know, especially those of you that teach elementary, that this is possible. And it isn't any different. You still get to interact with your kids. You just don't get to see them, but you do still get to interact with them. So here's a little snippet of my live Facebook lesson for kindergarten and first grade.
Tie them in a ball, can you throw them over your shoulder like a continental soldier? Do your ears hang low? You guys are silly, that's way too fast. Do your ears hang low? Do they wobble through the throat?
Can you guys hear
it?
Can you
tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Can you throw them over your shoulder like a continental soldier? Do your ears hang low? Oh, I hope you had as much fun with that one as I did.
If you look over here in the comments on the right-hand side.
Now, for the next one, I'm gonna need some help from you, and even though I can't hear you with my ears, I'll be able to see what you type. So if you're allowed out there to type on whatever device you're using, get ready to do that.
You just have to prepare a little bit.
There was a man lived in the moon.
So I've given them time to go get someone to type if they need somebody to type.
There was a man lived in the moon, and his Everybody tap your head with me. And his head
Just
was
like we would do
made
in
of
any
Swiss
elementary
cheese. Swiss cheese. His head was made of Swiss cheese, and his name was Aiken Drum. We're going to move on to something his shoulders can be made out of, but I need your help. You go ahead and type in there, what food should Aiken Drum's shoulders be made out of? His head was Swiss cheese.
And they start
What
pouring
food?
in.
You go ahead
see the
and type a
comments down
food in there for me.
So everybody's right there with
And as
me,
long as it's not broccoli,
naming
I'll do
their
it.
food. And that's how I was able to share elementary lesson with my students, and I completely and totally felt connected with them from the very, very beginning. So like I said, I was able to make it interactive, and I would just tell you, it was the most, I can't remember ever being that nervous teaching. It's been many years since I was nervous to do that. The fact that it was live and people were going to hear me mess up my accompaniment and people were going to hear me get pitchy when I was giggling or something like that, it really made me nervous. But I just told myself, I'm not doing it for any of those reasons. I'm not doing it for the other, people that might have look at it in that viewpoint. I'm doing it for the kids. So I don't know if it's because it was the first one or if because I did it so early. We had 836 people watching live for a 20-minute kindergarten lesson. And since then, it's almost at 2,000 views. That's just on my school district Facebook page. So I just wanted to share that with you because I know a lot of you are really concerned that you weren't going to get to teach how you want to teach. And you are going to get to teach, especially our little friends, the way that you want to teach. It's just about finding the right tool. There are ways to make it interactive. There are ways to make it live. If your school district doesn't have a Facebook set up, fortunately, social media is a way to get the word out really, really fast. But again, I just want to encourage you to get whatever boss you need to get approval before you do anything as a representative of your school district. Because I was so nervous, that the day before, I reached out to a colleague whose students I already teach, and I did a test run with them live first. So if you're at all worried about that aspect that I was, you can always do a test run beforehand. So that's just a little bit of sharing about some elementary stuff. There's more to come later, but I think Stacy has some stuff to share with you right now too.
Right. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give you a little perspective from the higher ed end of things. Just like you, we had to leave our classrooms, and it's been a real shock to the system. I have to say that where I teach, Grove City College, we were one of the last schools to close. So there was a real flurry at the week before we went to online. We're in our second week of online now. There was a real flurry a couple weeks ago to get the training in and figure out what platform we were using. We already had the Teams, which is Microsoft Teams, in place, and a lot of our departments were using it. We use it in the music department for like some, not meeting, but just a place to share information with each other and that kind of thing. And what we discovered is that there's a video conferencing platform. It's not ideal. We can only see 4 students at a time rather than like this where we can see everybody at a time. And that's been my biggest frustration because probably like a lot of you draw from the energy of your students when you're teaching. And so it's been a little bit difficult for me. It's been a real learning curve. They're working on getting us a kind of an add-on to the Microsoft Teams so that we can continue to do some more video conferencing like Zoom. Some schools have let professors, and this is just anecdotal from reading like the Facebook pages, there's some higher ed Facebook pages out there a lot of people are on. There's some anecdotal, well, my college is letting me use whatever platform I want to, Zoom, Teams, whatever platform it is. And the result of that, what I'm hearing is that the students are getting kind of frustrated because they don't know from professor to professor in those cases what they're supposed to be using. And it's a learning curve for them too. Just like it's a learning curve for us, our students, no matter what age they are, it's a learning curve for them. Yes, they're savvy with social media and computers, but they haven't had to use it as a learning platform in those cases. So that's something just to keep in mind, I think at all ages, that we all have to be patient with each other. And if you can keep it on one platform, I know it's not your decision necessarily at the public school level, but for us, our school told us, our administration told us, you must use Teams. And they also have strongly encouraged us, number one, to record all of our lectures in case the student loses internet or can't meet, maybe they're in Alaska and we're having class at a certain time and they can't meet with us. We are meeting synchronously. We're actually meeting at our class time. A lot of professors in other schools I know are recording lectures, and then students just, my son is doing this from Kent State, where he gets on, watches a lecture, and then responds, and maybe once a week has to do something. We're actually meeting with our students at their class time. And I asked my students, because I had a meeting with my PMEA students the other day, I said, so I'm doing this webinar on Tuesday. What are some of your feelings after a week of online learning? And I thought I'd share some of this with you, because even though my students are college students, I feel like especially your high school students, your junior high students, be feeling the same way too, in a way. They like the one platform. A couple of them have siblings who are in the same boat, and they're frustrated with having multiple things to have to learn. They do like the synchronous, where we're meeting at their same time. It's kept them motivated. It's kept them accountable. It's kept them in a routine, and they're able to maintain the relationships that they have with their professors and their students more readily than if they're meeting asynchronously and they're not all meeting at the same time, which I thought was pretty interesting and intuitive. They also, what's really been cool, and I've seen this in my case, and I've seen it anecdotally on Facebook and in other conversations, the chat function. I see even right now we have 4 people who've engaged in the chat function on here. No matter what platform you have, there's usually a chat function. We have students who've never said anything in class. All of a sudden, they are hugely engaged because they're using the chat function, which is kind of cool. So if there is a chat function in whatever you're working on, and like your Facebook Live that Teri showed us, the students will respond to that because it's pretty non-threatening for them. So keep that as a viable communication option. I think that would be a piece of advice. And the only other thing I could ask or tell you about is our student teachers are really in limbo right now. We have a couple at Grove City, and I know across the state we have student teachers who've been taken out of because of their college decision and now the public school decision, they no longer have placements. They're just wondering what's going to happen. Some schools have gotten them engaged in some online learning, and they're working with their cooperating teachers. I know in my case, my one student teacher is at a school that they're not requiring their music teachers to do anything. So he has nothing to do. So I've reached out to some other teachers in the area, and they're willing to work with him to at least give him some hours. What we're doing, the state has told us nothing. So if you have student teacher, or you are aware of student teachers in your area, and you feel you can maybe help, the state has given us no guidance. We don't know if they have to keep track of their hours, what they have to do. So we're asking ours to keep track of their hours and keep up with their professional development, because it might be one of those things at the end of the time, they'll say, oh, by the way, you need to have done this much, even though they're not going to have the same hour requirement. We know that, but we don't know what the requirements are going to be yet. So that's been a frustration for us. And we just ask, if you do have a student teacher, if you're a cooperating teacher, if maybe you could just like kind of help that along, because music's a little tricky sometimes for that. So that's what I have to offer, the little request at the end. So thanks, everybody. And I think we have Scott next. Teri, is that correct? Okay.
Yep. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. And I'm going to share with you a couple of things, a little bit from a high school ensemble director perspective, and as well as a few ideas and thoughts from the national perspective and from NAFME. So first of all, I think to share kind of a success is that we all probably agree this is not the idea for music. And it's been a little bit crazy trying to figure out how we connect and build the magic, and I'll use that word, the magic that happens in an ensemble setting virtually. It's really tough. So I've come up with some well, here, I'll give a quick background. So we have students are one-to-one with Chromebooks. And last week we were in FID days. So it was graded online. Every class had to have an assignment every day that was graded. It was very intense, very overwhelming for teachers, very overwhelming for students. quickly administration went, whoa, okay. Now this week we've had a couple of days to have in-service, virtual in-service, with tons of resources that our admin's throwing at us, as well as anything we can find. And then starting tomorrow, we're in a period of enrichment. This is going to last a few days to transition us into our fourth marking period that we were just told will be pass-fail, but it is, we are returning to instruction, moving on with curriculum. So we've had kind of a wave of a whole lot happening here for us. So last week we did some things. We had a big meeting with the whole band on Zoom and got to say hi and see everybody. In the last 10 seconds, I unmuted all 90 of them, and it was chaotic, but it was fun and it was great. And at that moment, I realized how hard this was going to be for us. You know, I'm a planner. I'm always thinking what's next, and everything was wiped out. Everything we had planned with those kids was wiped out. But what didn't change was the smiles on their faces and the excitement that they had to see each other. And so I've spent this last week really trying to find what is that success story, like Teri said. What's that piece, that nugget that we can capitalize on through all of this? And I think it's social emotional learning. And so my success would have been last week. I had them do a musical map. I sent them some recordings. I scanned every piece of music that's in their folders, and they had to create a musical map of the intensity levels for one of the pieces that we were doing. But it was an affective map, and I used some SEL language to have them at each of those points tell us, you know, how are they feeling? How did that music make them feel at those points? And so, you know, okay, it's a listening lesson, doesn't seem, you know, super intense, but that was the one assignment that the kids came back and said, boy, you know, it was a challenge, but it was fun to do. I also had them record themselves practicing and those sorts of things. And a few other smaller assignments. But what I want to share with you right now, I think you'll find rather humorous. On our Google Classroom, we are doing, in this period of enrichment, I started something that I thought would be just a little bit more fun for them. And let me find this here. So this is going up tonight for the kids to see. And let me share this. Hey everybody, I don't know about you all, but boy, I'm kind of confused with what's going on these crazy days. You know, I've got some feelings, but I'm kind of mixed up. I don't know if I'm like angry and frustrated or happy and excited. I don't know if we're like headed into Memorial Day coming up here, or is it the 4th of July? Maybe it's time for a beach vacation, or heck, maybe it's even Christmas. I'm not sure. I'm really having a hard time making sense of all this. But you know what? You all can help us make sense of this by going on a little scavenger hunt with us. Help us find those feelings by finding song titles that match the emotions that go on with our crazy days. And I'll tell you what, you know, I know that we're always the Tigers, but at the same time, just help us make sense of what day of the week it is. Good luck and have some fun. Hang on here. Let me stop sharing. Okay, so you can see that was sort of a fun little thing, and so we have this scavenger hunt for them to do with song titles and so on. But the point of all of this is that we're trying to make sure that they're okay. We're trying to make sure that we're okay. It's okay to be a little silly. It's okay to have a little fun with this. I think that's number one. You know, back to the smiles that I saw when we had our big Zoom meeting, I think it's those connections that we have with our kids every day that means so much. And that's really hard to do in a virtual setting. So I think that along those lines, you know, I can tell you, or we can chat later about other ideas. And I know lots of folks are going to share other great resources that are out there. But I just wanted to say a couple of words from the NAFME side of things about resources, and a big thanks to Paul. I know we mentioned him earlier, but Paul Fox has done a great job curating and going through resources that are on the PMEA website. NAFME has also been doing something similar, and there's a statement that I want to read to you about how we feel strongly about online resources. It says, NAFME cares about our students, so we advocate for equitable access to instruction. As we curate materials to help members implement online learning, we recognize that effective online instruction in any way, in any subject, requires the following: universal access to learning devices and internet services, professional learning opportunities, and time for educators to design online learning environments, tasks, and assessments, opportunities for students to learn how to succeed with online instruction, and finally, an appropriate learning management system. Now, I don't know about any of you, but in my school, none of that's in place really. You know, the plane took off 3 weeks ago and we're building it in the sky. And right now we're flying at about 50,000 feet looking down, and we're trying a lot of different things. And so my feeling about this with online resources is you've got to find what works for you. You know, there's great things. Flipgrid is something that's awesome. I could start naming off all these things. Paul could probably talk to us for 2 hours about all that he looked for and looked through. But my point in this is that you need to find what works for you, and less is more in many cases. You know, that silly little video that's going up tonight for the kids to do this little thing tomorrow for this enrichment period, if it brings a smile to them and connects me a little bit to them, that's a victory. That's a success story. You know, can we continue on trying to figure out how to bring about, you know, our repertoire alive to them, whether it's through the composer or through them practicing and all those sorts of things? Sure, but those are the things that I'm struggling with the most, is how do we have an ensemble experience? And in the last 2 weeks, I'm kind of coming up with, we don't, you know, it's just different. I've seen a great video about, you know, don't try to be Eric Whitaker and have the online virtual choir. You know, that's a big thing. Everybody's trying to do this. Now, are there things to experiment with, like a cappella and some of these others? Absolutely. You know, experiment, have fun, but that doesn't replace the magic and the joy, and as well as the rigor and the scaffolding and all the things that we do for our students every day. So I'm going to leave you with this. I think, well, two more quick things. One is, if you're looking for a place to start, besides the PMEA website or NAFME's website, which both have a lot of resources, there's a Facebook page, Music Educators Creating Online Learning. Music Educators Creating Online Learning. It is full of resources and more, and that's a great place to post questions. I posted something about posting videos and is there a way to make the video piece happen faster? And I got, I think, 40 responses just in a couple of hours. So there's a lot of people that know a lot more than any one of us out there. So I really recommend that as a great starting place, as well as the resources that PMEA and Paul have curated and what NAFME has. And I'm going to leave you with this. I started with this. Our self-care is critical. We have got to take care of ourselves, and there have been wonderful webinars and sessions out there for this exact topic, for the self-care for music educators. There was one this afternoon at noon that I tuned into, and it was right before my department chair meeting with my administration at 1. And boy, I was relaxed and calm going into that after doing some breathing and some, you know, just some thinking and trying to prioritize what really matters right now. And it's our families, it's taking care of our health, it's looking out for what's best in humanity right now. And so I really encourage everybody to take a minute, if, you know, no matter how good you think you've got all this down and figured out, take a minute, check out some of the resources for music educators for self-care. And even if you do one thing, it's going to pay off dividends. So good luck, everybody. I'm anxious to hear what everybody else has to share too.
Scott, can you put in the chat box that resource you said? Music educators, that's all I got. Thank you. So do you remember this survey that some of you took that said whether or not you'd be willing to share some of the successes you had? So I read over those, and I emailed some people, and some of them are here tonight and some of them aren't. So it's time for some of you to share. Remember, before you start talking, and you can always tell us you don't want to, that's fine too. We don't want to put anybody on the spot. Just remember to unmute yourself, especially with a Zoom this big, we can't see everybody on one screen. I also wonder, one of the other frustrations that somebody had was when they're getting instructions on how to do things online, that the instructor goes way too fast. And that was their chief frustration, which I can completely relate to. So those of you that share this evening, just remember, repeat stuff when you're giving anybody a resource, and to go slow and give everybody time to take in all the wonderful advice you have to say. So I was hoping, I don't think, is Shannon Geary here? She had some success with teaching private lessons on Google Meet, but I don't see her name over there. But I do happen to know that Paul Fox has been teaching some private lessons on Zoom, right, Paul? Do you have any advice to give us about some private lessons that you're teaching on Zoom?
Okay, well, we started Zoom and we discovered all kinds of problems, and I ended up buying the $15 a month version. First piece of advice: if you decide to do Zoom and you can keep your lessons at 30 minutes and just invite one person at a time, you can have the free version. But my wife, who actually has the studio violin and cello lessons, I think it was easier just to invite all of her students for a Monday night session. And what happened, of course, is we instantly got way over the 40-minute for more than 3 people or whatever. And it was just bite the bullet and pay for it. You click on the, what's the setting for sound, natural sound, or you want to get rid of the automatic sound setting. And there's a place to do that. Pretty much, if you're going to accompany your student for some reason, you have to have that student turn off their mic. You have to play with the sound. The sound is the greatest challenge with that. But one-on-one, you have the music in front of you. You've had your student mark the measure numbers. You have the same measure numbers. You don't say line 5 and whatever, count over 17 measures. And then you have the student play, and then you stop and you say, okay, let's talk about. You won't like the sound, but you can actually see pretty well if you have them set it up. Many of the students are using iPads. iPads are a little harder to adjust than the computer screen. But and the person that I really would like to bow to for information about this is Susanna Sonnenberg, and she wrote an article right off the bat about how to do online lessons and about the hardware and what you should do with the microphone and possibly other issues, such as make sure you're actually, if you can help it, not do Wi-Fi. I haven't had any trouble with Wi-Fi with our lessons.
How can we find that article, Paul?
It's up on the, am I allowed to share my screen? I think. If Brewster will let me share my screen, I will share my screen. So this is the thing we were talking about. Can you see that? Yes?
Yes, yes.
So on the focus area of the PMEA that says Council for Teacher Training, Recruitment, and Retention, we have a whole gang of articles. We had separated hers out. She gave us an article really early on, Teaching Online Music Lesson Basics 101. You can click on that. And she has a lot better information about this. We're still in the exploratory phase. I think I would do what Scott has already done, maybe have a check-in session using Zoom as my favorite. And you can have everybody in on Zoom as long as you keep it under 40 minutes.
Okay.
No limitation. Anyway, come to this. And of course, this bottom bullet, online music education, that has everything above it. So if you really want to go through, I'm not really curating it. I'm just finding it and throwing it in there everywhere you could possibly look at. There'd be some things for you.
Okay.
Okay, how do I unshare?
Thank you very much, Paul.
Okay, I gotta unshare my thing. Oh, here we go. Stop share. Thanks.
So I did see that Michael Meyer is here tonight, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but he has been teaching at a cyber school, so he was already probably way ahead of the rest of us on this curve. But I asked him specifically if he's willing to talk about what it's like for the students when they begin online learning. You there, Michael?
Yeah,
There he
absolutely.
is.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Yeah, and so it's a completely different situation. I mean, working at an established cyber school, you know, compared to, hey, surprise, take your entire classroom and band room and somehow squeeze it into a Zoom. I mean, it's you know, I don't want to compare it because I think that there's a lot that you guys are going to be going through, which is, you know, not my experience. But yeah, so those kind of first couple of days when a student is new to it, you know, and they're kind of testing the waters a little bit there. It's just like, you know, it's something we talk about. There's a book about that, right? You know, the first days of school. It's pretty big. They're going to make some decisions right off the bat about, you know, does my teacher know what they're doing? And right now the answer is probably no. So you know, you kind of have to find that balance of saying like, yeah, we are kind of learning this together and it's going to be okay. They're looking kind of for layers of resources, I think. You know, if the whole thing is, okay, today at this time, we're going to log into Zoom. As long as all the kids know how to do that and it works and they get in at the right time and they stay in, then everything's fine. But if there's some kind of, you know, mistake or they have trouble getting in, if they weren't given a, you know, but here's who you can call or here's who you can email, here's another way to access your teacher or another teacher if you're having some trouble, you know, they kind of need those layers to fall back on because otherwise they're going to get frustrated pretty quickly and just kind of sort of give up. I'm sorry, I forget the name, but someone had mentioned before today here about it's nice if a school can stick to one platform. And I sympathize with administrators who want to just say, look, I'm going to tell the teachers to choose whatever they want so they can't get mad at me. I see what they're doing there. But it's so good for the students if everyone is on one platform because there'll be a little bit of a learning curve, but then that's it. And then they've got it. And then they'll have that control that they want where they're comfortable and they can come in and they say, I know how to chat here and I know how to, you know, whatever way they have for feedback. It looks like Zoom has the reactions and if there's polling or quizzes or anything like that, you want to use all that kind of stuff. You know, just like you wouldn't want to just straight lecture in a real classroom. You want to see, well, how can I avoid that? How can I make sure I'm giving students someone mentioned Flipgrid. Flipgrid's fantastic. You know, give the students some sort of way to be contributing and to be interacting with each other and everything like that. I hate to say this because it's kind of it's a pretty negative thing, but from talking to some teachers who are just started this like everyone has and kind of I jumped onto Twitter for the first time to kind of put myself out there as a resource and reach out to other teachers who are all of a sudden everyone's a cyber school teacher. And one of the things I noticed is a lot of people saying like, well, where are the students? They were, you know, everyone shows up to class, but, you know, only half the kids showed up to the Zoom meeting that we were supposed to have. Unfortunately, in the cyber world, attendance is probably the biggest issue. Attendance of every level, students just not coming at all, students coming late, students coming and then leaving, students logging into Zoom and then just walking away and then coming back to turn it off at the end of the hour. It's probably going to hit a lot of administrators and teachers as more of an issue than they first saw. I think the other issues, you know, dealing with the technology, dealing with the fact that we know some of these kids are dealing with, they're in families where the parents just got laid off. They're in families where, you know, of course, there's a virus going around. People are getting sick. So we, you know, those things are in our minds right now. How do we help the students through that? How do we help the students through this new technology thing? If we're not preparing right away for this, this attendance is going to be an issue, and kind of having a plan and what are we going to do about that. I think a lot of schools are going to be kind of surprised by that, because again, the other things I think are foreseeable. I think that that's going to be a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. That
Welcome.
was a different perspective than I'm sure many of us have gotten a chance to hear throughout all this. So thank you again. I also want to encourage everybody to keep an eye on the chat box, and feel free, if you see someone ask a question that you can answer, feel free to jump in and give them some advice. So, and I apologize if I say this name wrong, but I believe, is it Shalise Stolars? Are you here tonight? I thought I saw your name. Oh, great. Did I say it right?
Yeah. Nice job. Yeah.
Hi. Shalise has done
Can
a
you
little.
guys hear me okay?
You're lagging a little bit. I think we'll give it a try, and if it doesn't work, we'll probably mute you and go on, but we're going to give it a try. So if I understand correctly, you have a little bit of, you have a, journal's not the right word. You have something that you do regularly with your chorus, and a lot of people were asking for specific resources, activities, tools. I was hoping you could share that. Still there?
Sure. So I'm actually on my school issued Chromebook for this. So I'm going to try. I didn't know if it was going to handle it very well, so I apologize. Can you all hear me okay? It keeps freezing on my end, so I apologize. A weekly assignment for my choir. Give me 1 second. Here is a sample of my choir notebook would be. So this is what the student sees. And so it's by every single week. I just change what the dates are. Every time there's a day off of school, like you can see on Monday, I ask them how music was a part of their day. And then I can ask some very specific questions that we've talked about in our rehearsal. And then I go through to some, we had read through It's a Holiday Season, so I made a cheesy little question there. Here's a couple of other questions here, talking about dynamics that we had been discussing with a certain arrangement that we were doing. And then even just what does the dynamic symbol mean? So it can, back there. There we go. I hope, were you all able to see that? It was the first time I shared my screen, so I hope it worked.
We did see it.
But that is something that I do weekly, and it can be something like, what's your favorite the topping for National Pizza Day was on a Saturday one time. Or it can be something about musical forms that we've discussed, and it can be everything in between. We all go through those times where our classes are canceled for various assemblies and things. So we had a motivational speaker come in, and it, of course, it took away one of my class periods. So I asked them what they got out of it and how it can apply to their life. So it wasn't necessarily my class related, but it was something that they had been doing during that time. And I find that the assignments that I give them is I get very honest and raw answers from them. So as far as connection is concerned, I think that it's a really cool tool because it's very individual. And okay, I was looking at the chat thing. I know, sorry.
It's okay. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was really, really great. So if, thank you again, Shalise. Really, really appreciate it.
Let me try to switch to a different device here, and then I will log back in. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. So if you guys are interested, and a lot of you said you were, on specific online resources like that, in addition to the things that Paul showed you, I really think it's worth your time to check out our webinar from last week. It was called, I think it was called Applying, and applying was like apps on your phone, applying music skills. And I see some of you that are here tonight saw that. Maybe you could give a shout out in the chat box if you agree or not. I think there were at least a dozen different online resources that blew my mind that you could use tomorrow. So if you're looking specifically for online resources as ways to get your students connected with music at home, while you figure out how you want to deliver your instruction that you typically do, I really recommend you checking out that webinar. And those are available on the PMEA website under conferences and events, webinars, and it's the one from last week. It's called Applying Music Skills, I believe was the name of it. We are also going to, I know a lot of people had questions about rehearsals, and we are going to open that up for discussion. I just wanted to let you know that we do have in this series, PMEA Cares, Together We Teach, we have presenters coming in the upcoming weeks that are going to speak directly about technology and rehearsal. And I've asked them to gear it toward teaching rehearsals online. I can't speak specifically about what they're going to do in their presentation, but Thursdays is by a band director out of Kentucky. His name's Stephen Keys, and he's going to talk about specifically band rehearsal online. So I know that a lot of you are looking for those things. Continue to check out this webinar series for the specific topics you're looking for. And speaking of online resources, Kelly Myers is going to share with you how you use Screencastify, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, you can go ahead and share your screen there. It's a Google extension, and I just used it for my first time myself this week. It's the easiest thing in the world. Hi, Kelly.
We are going to be
creating sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Yeah, this is really, really easy to add to your Chrome browser. This is actually something I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. It's super easy to use, and it's something that I have been using for a long time, not just the past few weeks here. It's just really useful in general to be able to show them what's going on your screen. And now that we're moving to so many online based activities, it's super useful because a lot of the things that we can do online are a little bit cumbersome to explain step by step if you're using these programs. I am speaking from a junior high general music point of view here. What you are going to see is actually not from the past 2 days. The ones that I've been using recently, I've been using with BandLab, and they've gone really, really well. And it cuts out of a lot of frustration. So this is just a project that I had them doing. This was probably two weeks ago maybe that I used this, and this was a small piece of like a much larger project, and I won't play the whole thing for you, but you can see bits of it.
Melody with
let's fast forward here.
That so we have our cat's meow on top, and I'm going to click create. All right.
And this is in Google
like I
Flat.
said, we are going to put in our root position chords kind of fast. We are using C, G, A minor, and F. And just like when we play these, I'm going to write these in here the same way.
Fast forward a little.
In Google Classroom. Every other note, A minor, and F. There we go. Okay. So I got my C chord, my G, my A minor, and my F. I'm going to go ahead and put our root note in. We know that our root note is the bottom note of our root
fast
position
forward
chord,
again.
the beginning, once we have gotten to the end of this part. Now, here is the part where
keep going forward. You don't need to see the whole thing,
but go ahead and pick G because there's a G here, relatively close to one another.
That's just, I would like to say that's just for Teri.
Oops. There we go. Now I'm on this chord now. I have A, C, or E.
So you can see there, I'm going to stop sharing. So you can see it's just me sharing, walking through the steps of a project so that they can see it step by step. That was a project just composing using, you know, root position chords, quarter notes, and they were going then to play those things and add it to part of a much larger project. But what I have found this week and last week is this has been completely invaluable to simplifying things. In my case, it's really hard to get my classes to meet effectively face-to-face. First of all, it's not required. So, and I can't require it, but second of all, it's first thing in the morning for my scheduled time for my school. They kind of blocked out certain scheduled times for each subject, and music classes are first. So, so far, I've not had a lot of people, but I have a ton of people doing the material that's there. It just seems like they don't necessarily want to wake up at 7 in the morning. So this has been a way to get them all of the information from my voice, not just, you know, in a PDF or in a document or whatever, so that I can kind of explain things a little bit more easily. Like I said, I've used this. This is not like something special that I started using for online learning. It's been really valuable for, say, my kids that miss class for whatever reason and need to get caught up. And it's quick and easy for me to make that. So just a good resource in general.
Thanks, Kelly. So, and the other thing that Screencastify can do is it will record you on there giving the directions. So that's just another way, you know, nice that they get to see you again. There's a picture of you actually giving them the directions while they can follow along on the screen. So it's a great tool for explaining how to use a website or a software or Chrome or anything like that. Thanks again, Kelly. So I know you guys had a bunch of other questions. I wrote down some of the ones that were really repeated. What I'd like to do is throw them out there for anyone that's here tonight to field. If you've had any success with it, any advice you could give to anybody that has it. And how we're going to do this is if you go down to the bottom, there is an icon there. It says participants. If you click that, you'll see everybody's name on the right-hand side. Can I get a thumbs up if anybody's with me there? Thank you. At the bottom of those listed names, you should see the word raise hand. So if you want to say something, then just go ahead and raise your hand and we can unmute you. That way we don't have 60 people talking at once, like a Sheehan rehearsal, apparently. All right, so has anyone had any success or had a good place to start for teaching anything AP? Anyone have anything to add? You can just raise your hand.
I'll jump in there, Teri.
Thanks.
Yeah, so for AP, we have been doing a blend of synchronous live sessions and learning. The AP Central has videos that are every day at 10 a.m. are live and they're being recorded via YouTube that you can go back and look at them every day. They're on AP Central. On Friday, they're going to release the test parameters of how the test is being reduced. And there's just a lot of resources out there. If you're looking for like some specific sorts of things that we've been doing on our own, we've been doing some oral training where we record just using any old recording app on a phone and posting that to our Google Classroom along with like some multiple choice questions. It could be recording of just intervals, chords, inversions, all that sort of thing, as well as recording excerpts of music and then coming up with multiple choice questions. I believe, if I'm understanding the AP correctly, they're looking at it's just going to be the open-ended questions. So once we get that clarification on Friday, I'll know better how to move forward in preparing the students for the melodic and harmonic dictations, as well as everything else on there. And the sight singing remains to be seen. I told the students next week we were going to practice sight singing, but when they record themselves, they could record themselves 5-10 times. It's not really a true sight singing, but anyhow, we're going to try to figure that out a little bit. So that's how I'm doing it, a little bit of mix of one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but live sessions with some asynchronous work.
Thanks, Scott. How about, does anybody have any good suggestions or advice for the best way to get good sound quality out of your phone or whatever device you're using, sound quality and camera quality? Or if someone was going to purchase some software in this time, does anyone have one that they would suggest? Nope, nobody wants to get into the Apple Android fight. Is that what this is? Okay, we'll do our best to keep looking for you. I know a lot of you wanted some advice on that. If it helps, my phone's better than my computer. Does that help anybody? How about, does anybody have any good resources for helping their students tune strings at home? Anybody found a good online video or anything for that yet? How about an app somebody already has on their phone for tuning? Anybody? All right, Erica Milbourne. You have to unmute yourself. I can't do it.
Okay, hey. So I started actually using an app called Tuner Lite with my students, specifically my 7th graders, because they basically were just using fine tuners to tune. I'm a string teacher. And so they liked it because they were able to bring their cell phones into school. How grateful I was that I did that back in January, because now they're at home without me, but as long as they have the app, they still are somewhat self-sufficient. I did get an email yesterday from one of my students. His E-string had completely unwound. So I did do a Google Meet with him and just helped to show him, you know, how to turn with the pegs, because they hadn't learned that part yet. And he was really excited when he was able to be finished with that. And just like I'm sure some of you, my district is really frowning upon live interaction with kids for varieties of reasons, but you do what you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erica.
Sure.
Andrew?
I just have a suggestion for a tuning app. Most of you probably know this if you use a tuner on your phone or something like that. The Tonal Energy app is awesome. It looks like this. It's on my iPad right now. And there are several different parts to it where you have a drone that you can choose chromatic pitches. It'll actually like analyze your sound. There's a metronome right on it. You can use multiple parts of it at once. It's great for upper grades. I wouldn't suggest it for younger grades because it's probably a little bit too, there's probably a little bit too much stimulation there. But it does smile at you when you're in tune, so that's positive. It doesn't frown at you when you're out of tune either. So
Oh, that's also good. So I know a lot of you had questions about Google Classroom, and I think without like people having that up on their screen ready to show you, that would probably take a little too much time. But I did just want to let you know that our clinician for Thursday night's webinar is a certified level 2 Google teacher. I'm not sure what the last word is in that certification, but he's certified level 2. So while he's specifically going to be addressing band, I'm sure that he will be able to help you out with if you have questions. And then also on April 14th, Sue Basilick, who's also Google certified, is going to be giving another webinar about Google Classroom, all Google. And so come prepared those nights with your questions, especially I think after the second one, after using it for a few more weeks, you might have even more questions that you can share at that time. So we have a couple experts that will be able to help you with that. One question, it was put different ways, but I guess, does anybody have suggestions on how you can this is a biggie, everybody get comfy, how you can maintain high standards and not, the question is, how do I maintain high standards specifically in my rehearsals? Do I turn it into music appreciation and go after a different set of standards? And to avoid busy work in general, how do I maintain those high standards? This is the big question. But if anybody has given any thought to that yet and just wants to share your opinion or share a frustration you found with that, something you've tried and it hasn't worked, this is your chance to do that. Michael Meyer, you have to unmute yourself.
Hey, so I mean, and maybe this gives you sort of an idea of the landscape. I teach at a cyber school. We don't have ensembles. I wish we did. It's, you know, and I'm kind of wondering, after this moment in time with so many music teachers around the world. I was chatting online with someone from a Somali teacher from London yesterday. I mean, everyone is dealing with this. I wonder if there's going to be some technological breakthroughs, or someone's going to come up with some ideas. I've spent years kind of looking for how do we do more, you know, musical stuff, instrumental stuff online, and not really coming up with anything all that great. We have a sort of beginner piano course where we send the 49 key, you know, M Audio keyboards out to students. They hook it up to their Mac and through GarageBand do some recording of themselves playing, and it's really, really fantastic. But it isn't an ensemble, you know, and trying to get that to go well is really a challenge. I don't think that you need to necessarily go so far off and say, okay, that's it, we're just music appreciation now. Listen to this, you know, Beethoven piece and write about it, or let's, you know, read this chapter about music history. I'm kind of wondering, and because this is not my world, I went straight from college into cyber school, so I've never led, outside of student teaching, I've never led a band, but I wonder how many of you wish you had more time for students to compose their own music, or to improvise their own music. You know, right now, where so many students are having, they're going through, as much as this is something we're always going to remember, they're always going to remember this moment too. So they've got a lot of, you know, even more feelings than they usually have. They have a lot to express right now. So it might be an interesting time to kind of shift to that a little bit. If you think that they're somewhat prepared for that, you know, whatever we've been teaching, whatever level they're at. So I think that's kind of the cyber school virtual music motto is not focus on what you can't do, but focus on what you can do. They can definitely do some really cool high level stuff kind of on their own. And then it's a question for what's your LMS? How are students turning it in? Are they posting it to Flipgrid or something like that? Are they emailing it to you? Is it through a Google School or whatever? So that's kind of my thought. And again, I wish I could say this is exactly how you conduct a band online, but I haven't figured it out yet. Hoping someone does.
Thank you very much. Scott?
Yes, yes, and I think everything he said was right on the money. This is a great opportunity for us to be creative. I wouldn't call it music appreciation, although there's nothing wrong with thinking of our students as the next generation of consumers when they're in their 30s and 40s and supporting music education, right? So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But here was my thought on this, and I have thought a lot about this, because as an ensemble director, we have a certain expectation for our students. And ultimately, what comes into my classroom every day is the musicianship that my students bring. And I can't do that for them. I can try to inspire them. I can try to motivate them. But ultimately, it's what those students come in the door with every day for a rehearsal. And our rehearsal room looks very different because it's the kitchen or the bathroom or the bedroom or the garage or wherever the students are right now. But I think when we're talking about trying to have that high expectation, that high level experiences, it's how we inspire the students to achieve that for themselves right now and giving them the tools to do it. No different than when they would walk into our band rooms or our choir rooms or orchestra rooms or a general music classroom, depending on the level that you're teaching and what you want the students to do. So within that, with saying that, I think about giving them models and examples the way we would do in a classroom. We have YouTube videos with some of the world's greatest players. The Berlin Philharmonic's giving concerts for free online. You name it, it's out there. Expose the students to that. Challenge them to do that. And I have and I think Paul has this online, but I posted a practice, what to do when you practice guide for my students that walks them through various steps and has some motivational things and all sorts of material to equip them, to empower them to take this for themselves. And if you want to take it a step further, what's it going to be like when we get back? And I have been definitely talking about that with my students. We can take 3 weeks. Originally, I was thinking this was 2 or 3 weeks. Well, we know that's not true. But we can't take 3 weeks of not playing at all, guys. It's not vacation. And then come back in and expect to be able to make great music. And even if that next time is in the fall, to take months off of not developing musicianship and not inspiring ourselves to be better, it would be really tough. And I'd say that for myself. I'd say that for myself of, studying my scores, listening to all kinds of recordings. Dennis Glocky from Penn State University is retiring this year. He was on the other night and he said he just watched an hour-and-a-half video of Robert Shaw rehearsing a Hindemith piece. And just because you can learn by, you're making that difference. You're choosing to make that difference now by you tuning in tonight. And that's what we want to try to ultimately get our students to be able to do, is to make that choice for themselves, to reach for that high excellence, that highest level that they can within the parameters. Sorry that was long-winded, but lots of thoughts on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Abby, for pointing that out. Thursday's webinar clinician is going to, it's not just band. He's a band director, but he's going to be addressing rehearsing in general. I know that we're over the hour mark. If it's okay with you, Abby, we'll just keep on going. And if people need to jump off, they can.
Of course.
Okay,
No
great.
limit.
David Saylor, did you want to talk to us about that?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hey, so I just wanted to jump off of what Michael was talking about with some great composition ideas. I think lots of our students would be intimidated by general conventional notation. So I think even I teach 6 through 12 choir. This is my first year, so this is just a resource that I found that I really love. It's a website called beepbox.co, not com.co. I'll write it in the chat here in a second. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. So it's basically just a sequencer, but it's super easy. You can set whatever scale you want. So right now we're just in C. You can customize the instrument. So let's see here. I'll just write a little, and then it'll just go. And then you can add some drums. And you can go on and on with this. I used this in general music to kind of do a video game composition unit that a lot of the students really enjoyed. But the thing that I really like about it is there's no crazy save option. So if I take the URL up here and I just copy it, that will send you to exactly what I just wrote here. So there's everything I just did automatically. So if you just copy and paste that URL, bam, they don't have to download in some specific file format, which you can do. You could get, say, a MIDI file or an MP3 out of this, but you don't have to. This is just, it's really important, like Michael was saying, to, examine the world just beyond performance. You know, there are 3 other big standard areas that we have to look at, even in ensemble music, is as much as we often forget, I think. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Tana? Did I say your name right? You're still muted. It's in the bottom left-hand corner
And to click unmute and I clicked out of the window. I'm sorry.
there.
Thanks for letting me speak. Everyone's got some really great ideas. I'm really motivated and really excited. I'm going to speak on the ensemble question because I've tried something that I've had some moderate success with, and you might find it to be helpful.
You see everybody leaning in closer.
Something that I tried last week with my kids was they all have copies of the music at home. And so if we say, all right, we're going to go from rehearsal 9 to rehearsal 16. First violins, you want to make sure that you're listening for this. You can demonstrate it if you want. You can set a metronome. I'm setting the metronome for quarter is 108. I'm going to count you in. 1, 2, here you go. They're muted, so there's not any of that sound interference. When they get to measure 16, they stop. You unmute to reflect. Hey, how did it go? Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. You can choose to unmute individual people if you want to hear what they're doing. If you have the paid for version of Zoom, you can assign kids to breakout rooms, or they could play without the worry. If you're using Schoology, Schoology Conference has that same breakout room concept. So you could put kids together to work together. That way they're still practicing, they're still working on repertoire, but you don't have all of that sound interference that we're worried about. Just a thought.
Could you write in the chat the resources that you mentioned? Thank you very much. That was fantastic. It was a great idea. And I saw Tina, you wrote this in there, and a couple other people were specifically wondering about large groups. What's the best way to reach your ensembles of a couple hundred people? Has anyone had any luck with that? How do you communicate with them? How do you get them to communicate with each other if that's your goal? Okay, I guess we're still searching for that answer. You would think you could just set up a group text. They seem to be really good at that. How about, has anybody started tackling any of this, how you keep track of their progress or grading or accountability for younger children that you have to grade? Has anybody begun to tackle any of that or think about how you might approach that? Still waiting on that one. I'm hoping that most of us haven't had to begin grading before we really get our feet under us with how this whole thing is working, but I'm sure it's coming. Anyone have any advice for how you can keep all of this stuff organized that you're seeing on your screen? Is there a good resource tool or anything anybody's found that really works for them to just keep all these different apps and online resources organized, easy to find? Everybody's desktop's just a hot mess.
Someone chatted, create your own Google Doc.
Oh, and okay. Thank you for that, Marissa. And Sarah Jackson is gonna share with us a little. You have to unmute your.
Okay, nope, I got it. Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'm answering 2 questions ago, but I just wanted to give out there another resource that I have not conquered, but I am beginning to try, which is, of course, we're all excited about virtual choirs. And if you're like me, you watch them and you almost feel guilty because you don't know how to put one together like Eric Whitaker does. And you think this would be the greatest thing for our schools to just bond us together. So I've been really interested in that particular topic. And one thing that JW Pepper is offering, if you go to their website, I like to get music from them. They have a composer that they work with. Their name is Pink Zebra, which is a funny but memorable name. Pink Zebra right now is offering a free GarageBand template for choirs. So far, I have downloaded and gotten the template into GarageBand. Pink Zebra is also offering free demos of all of their music. The idea is you move the accompaniment track over, you have your chorus kids sing such and such along with a backing track on their own phones and send it to you. And that goes into that free template. It comes with just a default of 10 sopranos, 10 altos, 10 tenors, baries, basses. You can delete some, you can also add some. Pink Zebra has also said that you are able to use other people's, accompaniment tracks or whatever. Right now, I haven't found that the accompaniment tracks are free. I'm finding that they're $27.99. But for me, this is perhaps the beginning of getting to try something with my choir kiddos so that they can sing together. So just an idea. Again, that was Pink Zebra from JW Pepper.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And that was the next thing I was going to bring up was the virtual choirs, because I know how desperate everybody is to give that a try. So I'm going to ask Erica to share what she wants to, and if anyone else wants to talk about virtual choirs, successes or not so much, or anything you have to add, please go ahead and raise your hand there. Go ahead, Erica.
Okay, so we were talking about, I'm going to share my screen. We were talking about how we keep things organized, and one of my department chairs created this for our department. So we have all of our stuff organized here, department docs, and as we've been starting to collect resources for this COVID thing, it's over in this resources section. He just literally created it the other day, but has started to keep a log of all the remote resources that we have all found and categorized, as you can see, games, assessments, collection, different things like that. So if anyone's interested in any of that, I'll put my email address in the chat. You're more than welcome to reach out anytime, and I will do my best to get to you in between all the rest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people were chatting in the box about making bookmarks. If you leave your screen there for a second, Erica, if you just look, can you point up there where the bookmarks show up when you put them, like on your toolbar there? It's right like where it says 41 left of 2. That's where you'll add your bookmarks, and then you can keep all your tabs organized up there. Thanks. Okay. Anybody have anything they wanted to add about virtual choirs or virtual performances, period? I've only heard some of my colleagues talk about how hard it is to do. That's all I've heard. Okay. And then someone else was asking, I don't know if anybody has any advice on virtual piano lab software. Does anybody know anything about piano labs that they could share, what they use, what they like, what they don't? Does anybody have anything else? I tried to get most of the stuff from the survey that I thought people might be able to be helpful with tonight. I know we didn't hit the how you rehearse a group. That's a really tough one, which is why we have some people coming up in the series that are hopefully going to address that. I don't know if it's ever going to be exactly like we want it to be when we're standing in front of them, but hopefully we'll find some tools that will work for that. Stephanie?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I wrote it in the chat as well. So currently my district and my union in particular is highly discouraging us from several things. Live communication with students, recording videos of ourselves to post, no matter how short, just to post for them to follow along with, learn from, as well as discouraging us from asking students to record or post anything to turn in to get feedback. So that limits me big time. I'm a middle school strings teacher. So that's very limiting on what I'm able to do. And I'm just wondering if there are any suggestions of how to do those things more securely, more safely, that I could suggest to these folks on our behalf, or just ways to advocate for a little bit more flexibility with doing that.
Anybody have anything they can share on about that? It's just so funny to hear the different circumstances because I'm required to make videos. It's just funny. Michael?
Yeah, it seems like a number of you guys are in that situation. I've seen a couple of people say that, which this is the first I'm hearing of that because, and sorry, I had to change locations because they just put my wife put the baby to sleep in the room I was next to, and so I crossed the hall here. But that's crazy because everything I've been hearing is about how everyone's on Zoom now. Everything is all about people using Zoom. But it seems like a few districts are really afraid to get into that. I mean, I don't know if they just need a minute to talk to their attorneys at the schools and kind of figure out what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. But just to put it out there, there's I think about 10 or a little more than 10 cyber schools operating in Pennsylvania right now. I mean, and we're all doing some kind of video chat and recording. We're not always posting recordings. My school doesn't actually do that anymore right now, but we're kind of back and forth with what we think is most educationally sound with that. I do think if they're afraid about the privacy and what's kind of available, finding some sort of learning management system. And there's we use Moodle personally, and I don't necessarily suggest that that's the best one to use, but if I think the idea of something that is like a learning management system, not just the software that you're kind of using for that purpose, they know about student privacy, and it is set up with some sort of guarantee that if the school is purchasing this or the school is agreeing to use this learning management system, the software is set up to protect children and to protect all the information and to make sure it's behind whatever sort of password or firewall. So I'm kind of blown away. I mean, I thought this was going to be like this crazy moment where teachers had to learn how to use Zoom and do music over Zoom, but to hear the opposite, that you have to figure it out without that, is even crazier. So hopefully that's something schools just kind of get past soon, but or I mean, honestly, if administrators want to contact the administrators of cyber schools and ask them, hey, what kind of legal things that you have to avoid, remember the whole point of a charter school is supposed to be that we're experimenting and trying new things for everyone to learn from, so take advantage of that. Call up your local cyber charter and see what they can help with. I know it's not necessarily school administrators here, but hopefully people take that step, because that's really crazy.
Thank you. Heather? There you go.
Michael, to your point, I think that this happened so quickly that I don't think that our administrators and our unions were able to sort of get the logistics and the legality of it up and running. I also we are we are not encouraged to have live chats with students. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have through Google Classroom, through Hangout, or just through Google Classroom itself, communicating with the students, or even through email, just so I have contact with them. Like today, I just put on Google Classroom. Hey, how's your day going? What music have you had today? And I had several students just post right on the Google Classroom stream. So I'm still communicating with them, and we're still having interaction. But it's not that liability of they're going to take the video and change it and and put it out with like someone else's voice going over mine. So that's what it's working for me, because of the whole Zoom Google thing.
Okay. And Erica?
I know that some of the concern in my district with the Google Meets, even with that, we have also been instructed not to do live instruction with our students. And if by some chance it's something you cannot avoid, you have to record the session. We I guess at the end of last week, we're told that Google apparently had figured out a way to have all of the student cameras disabled, so that if that was the concern, you could deal with it that way, and perhaps just have kids participate without the visual. And that as the facilitator of the meeting, you could mute everyone, you could remove a kid that maybe was being a little disruptive. But then the next issue came up that if you were not careful to be the last person out of the chat, and even if you were, the stream would remain live, so kids could go back into that same chat. And so there have been just so many things that came up that we weren't anticipating. And so we're not allowed to use Zoom. The district paid for an upgraded version of Google so that we could do the Google Meet. So we've been strictly prohibited from using the Zoom. I also serve as a local leader with my union, and I know that PSEA has also advised us not to do the live chatting. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong if you're teaching a lesson and you see a crack pipe in the background or something. You know what I mean? I know it's extreme, but issues like that can come up. So that's why our district is telling us no.
Yeah, they're all good points. Okay, so I don't see any other hands. We're gonna circle back around to where we were at the beginning, because Shalise is back on a different device. And Shalise, if you could just take a couple brief minutes to finish up what you wanted to share with us.
Sure, thanks. So I think you guys could see the screen that I was showing you. That was just one example, and I'm not sure if there are any questions about that, so I'll answer that along the way. But I do that as a weekly assignment for all of my choirs. Now that was an example for my senior high group. I do a totally different one for my junior high group, and then I can modify those for any of my special needs students. I also have a separate folder that I share with the learning support teachers with the answers, basically an answer key. So if they're working on it with them on their own at a different time, that those teachers can kind of assist them without knowing music and being intimidated by what we're doing. And it can be something very individualized. I use Google Classroom all the time in every one of my courses, and it's a great communication tool, but also for things like that, so you can personalize it. And I think that administratively, giving grades, it's a little bit more justifiable, and to use one of my administrators' words. So then it's not just participation grade or things like that you can prove and justify a different grade. Now that's not saying I don't do ensemble skills grades as well and various things, but it's just one example of what I do technology wise to help that. Something I'm going to try in this new age right now that we're in is smart music. I think it's gotten a lot better with the choral repertoire, and I had it once upon a time in the very beginning and it wasn't really developed enough. But my husband uses it a lot for his band students, and currently he's been getting a flood of assignments and things done from his students, and they're really, really enjoying it. And so I was poking around on his membership there at the choral stuff, and it looks pretty cool. But one one thing that I know Scott had mentioned some things earlier about self-care on our end, and I don't know, I feel very alone on an island in terms of all of you guys are so wonderful talking about all of these great resources. And it's not that I can't do video lessons or not permissible, but my students are so rural and very few of them actually have good or any internet access to begin with. So we are not to be instructing at all. And it's making me feel kind of worthless, to put it bluntly. I'm really struggling with it on a personal level. We got shut down 3 hours before curtain of my musical, and it was that abrupt that we're all facing. And I know I'm not alone in that sense, but to have it shut down so fast and then not be able to instruct, literally not able to instruct anything, not being required to instruct, not just nothing, has been very difficult to deal with. I have been incredibly active on my Google Classroom pages with my students, just trying to give them things to help them. So talking about the social emotional, that's just been my way of connecting with them. Sometimes I get a couple of them to respond, most of the time not, but that does not change the fact that I'm trying, and I'm giving them all kinds of resources that I find through those Facebook groups, like what Scott had mentioned earlier. You know, even videos, Andrew Lloyd Webber, I don't know if you've been following him, but all of these links that he's posting, I'm throwing that out there onto my Google Classroom. So the kids that can access it, they're getting some kind of enrichment. And I know that I did get a message from one of the parents that said how much she's loving all of the things that I'm posting and to keep it up. And I had said, well, thanks. I'm glad one person's watching it, even if it is a parent and not the kids. And she laughed and she said that they really are, and they talk about it a lot. So just because they're not posting and responding to me does not mean that they're not listening to us. So just to kind of reiterate, all of the great points that you guys are making, but I feel very lost in a moment because I can't actually give instruction with our rural area, with the demographic, with everything else. I have thought about doing those choir notebooks, you know, a week at a time, just to see who responds, and maybe that could be a connection for some of them to get to me. But other than that, it's just trying to enrich. I know that my husband's school district has also, they are instructed to give enrichment and review, but cannot instruct. And they are required to give a daily enrichment assignment, for lack of a better word. But again, nothing's being graded. My district, they are only focusing on the full subjects, and they had packet made per grade level, I guess, as enrichment, and it's a whole thing. So it kind of makes you feel like, oh, I guess I'm not worth, you know, doing stuff, but I'm trying to get my set out of that and just being there for my kids. I don't know if anybody else is on that island with me, but I hope that I'm not so alone as I feel. But these are great resources. I think that finding all of them out there is almost overwhelming. And it almost makes me feel like I'm not necessarily doing enough, even though I don't know. I just think that this is a very new territory for everyone, and I feel like my emotions go like this, trying to navigate all of it, like all of you are too. So I guess for me, I'm just kind of focusing on getting connected with the kids that I can, through the platform I can, and that's about it. So I'm looking forward to trying some new things. I know Breezing Through Theory is free until July, but I know that they're also bogged down right now. So I was thinking about getting that up for some of my music theory students. And thanks, Scott. I appreciate that.
Yeah, there were a lot of comments for you, Chili, so you should go back and look at
I've
them.
had some kids actually email me privately and just reach out and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they're, you know, they like the connection that way too. So that makes you feel good. But I think the abruptness, like was mentioned earlier, has just been really tough for all of us. So you know, but we'll make it through. We've got a great group, and I'm thankful for all of you sharing everything too. So yeah, if I can be of any help to anybody with the Google Classroom stuff, feel free to reach out anytime, because I use it constantly. Musictheory.net is also a wonderful resource. You can assign some quizzes through that as well. And I'm trying to think of just smart music, breezing through musictheory.net. I think there was another one. Let me look real quick. But that's about all that I'm trying to do. I think that with the virtual choir ideas, it's getting a little overwhelming for all of us out there, especially if you're part of that Facebook group that Scott had mentioned earlier. It's like nonstop, and it's very, very cool. The acapella act. I had also stumbled on a bracket, like a March Madness bracket of musicals and different. I've seen some with choral songs. I've seen some with band songs. I've seen some, you know, or whatever that you want to call it, in different categories. And people can vote. That's a pretty cool activity. So I guess from my perspective, that's where I'm at. I'm trying to enrich and just keep them thriving on the arts in any medium that I can, and keep them going. So, but I do appreciate everybody and everything that you're doing. So I hope that maybe that notebook, if anybody wants a copy of that, feel free to message or anything, and I can make that available somehow if you want to just do that.
Sure, that'd be great. Could you write your email in the chat box?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure a lot of people were really glad to hear what you had to say. I think we might be able to wrap up here with Kristen.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I use Google Classroom with my junior and senior high choirs, and it's tough to do anything virtually with them, but we've come up with our own little way of just having the kids connect with each other with what we call quarantunes. And the kids are singing whatever song they want and posting it up on the Google Classroom. And it's just been amazing what the kids have been saying to each other. Oh, I miss singing with you. I miss seeing you. And it's just been a nice way for them to interact. I sang one with my two daughters and posted it up for them. And we've been going back and forth for about a week. And it's just been really inspiring seeing the kids really getting into doing something special for themselves and putting it out there for their friends. And they really seem to be enjoying that connection where they could still hear each other sing. It's been nice for us.
That's great. I bet that has been a really sweet connection for them. That's nice that you're able to give that to them. Well, I don't see any other hands, but I'm going to check this evening off as a success. I hope that this was really meant as much to all of you as it did to me. It was great to talk music, and it was great to just hear from each other and share your resources. I'd really encourage you to continue to check out the webinar series to find stuff. You can always pop in for the night, and if you decide it's not for you, you can jet right back out. So I would encourage you to keep up with the webinar series. And Tina, Stacy, Scott, Abby, anything else to add?
The only thing I can say is last night I was listening to some music, as I do because it makes me feel better. And the only thing that came to mind was Nat King Cole's version of Smile. And it definitely describes what we're dealing with right now, is that our hearts are breaking for our kids, for our profession, for education, for the world. But we are going to get through this because of things like tonight. So thank you all for being here. It's so important, but keep smiling. We are going to get through this. We are.
Thanks, Tina. Mm-hmm. Abby, did you have anything you needed to wrap us up with?
My follow-up is just that you'll get an email tomorrow with the link to this recording and the links to the webinar surveys to complete for Act 48. And future webinars beyond April 6th will be posted by the end of the week. We'll keep sending out emails and that information as it becomes available.
Thank you again, everybody. Have a great night.